So you guys will all be using effects very soon in your projects, and so I thought I would do a little explanation of how effects work in Ableton Live. And effects racks, because you'll come across those as well, and I don't want you to be mystified by it. So here's something I wrote the other night. Just a little EDM for you. What I'm going to do is explain how to use effects. I'm going to create an instrument. This is an instance of operator here. I've just dragged and dropped over here under instruments. I've dragged a blank copy of operator over into this patch here, or into this track. And there's nothing currently, I haven't affected the settings at all. This is just the straight patch. The way it comes out is just a sine wave. So that's what it sounds like, just the raw patch. And I'm going to do some stuff to it just to make it sound a little more synthy. Okay, I'm just going to do a little pad thing here. Now I'm going to loop that by hitting Command L. That's turning on the global loop, by the way, for those of you who are wondering what the difference is between that and a sequential loop. Hitting Command L, if you have a selection, you hit Command L, it's going to turn on global loop, and it'll loop that selection. So I'm going to let that loop over and over and over again while I do things to it, so that you can hear what I'm doing to it while it's looping over and over. Alright, so these are the MIDI notes. They are playing into this instrument, which is called operator. It's a synth, it's a digital synth. And what I'm going to do here is drop some audio effects. As you can see, this instruction says drop audio effects. So I'm going to drop audio effects. So what happens is the MIDI notes play, they get interpreted by operator and made into sound. The sound goes into the audio effects, whatever they are, and then that plays out of the output of this channel. And then we hear that through the master output. So I'm going to go over to audio effects and see what I can play around with. The first thing I'm going to do is drop an auto filter. And I'm going to cut off some of the high frequencies. So this is how auto filter works. It basically works like a tone control on a guitar. Like you can think of this as turning down the tone control on an electric guitar. So as I pull this frequency down, you'll hear that change happening. So all I'm doing there is clicking and holding the frequency parameter and then dragging it up and down to change the value. You can also click here and type in values. So if you wanted to set it at, like, say 700, you can do that. Or if you wanted to set it for 1200, etc. And that's the cutoff frequency of the filter. And there's lots and lots of other parameters for the filter, but we'll get into that at some other time. I just wanted to cut some of the high frequencies off of it, so that it wouldn't be quite so harsh. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm basically making a pad sound here. I'm going to drop a simple delay after the filter. See what that sounds like. To drop a reverb on there. The dry wet control determines how much reverb and how much of the original signal you're hearing, all the way to the left. I'm all the way down here in the right corner, for those of you who don't know where I'm doing. All the way to the left is the dry signal, and all the way to the right is just the reverb, and then everything in between are varying mixes of those two sounds. the simple delay. In case you were wondering why there's a dry-wet control on both devices, you can do 0. This is just the dry signal on the delay. Let me turn this down here. This is just the dry signal on the delay. And then I'm going to slowly bring that up, all the way up. What this is doing is syncing. If you see that I have sync turned on for both of these left and right channels. This is the left channel here, all of this, and then that's copied here, and that's the right channel. What this is doing is this is syncing the delay time to beats in the measure. So there's one 16th note, two 16th notes, which is an eighth note, a dotted eighth note, a quarter note, and so on and so forth, all through the measure until you get to 16 and you're finally at a bar. So what I'm doing is just trying to find a combination of left and right channels that sounds good. Or if you turn sync off, you can do this in milliseconds. Sounds good to you. So I'm going to leave the simple delay on, and I'm going to go back to and let's see, what else can I add? There's a chorus. You throw that in there just for fun. So there's my pad sound. And what I'm going to do here is take all of these effects, which are currently running independently and separately from one another. So there's a separator, a bar in between each one of these, and I'm going to put them together in a rack. And one way to do that is to select the first one, and hold Shift and select the last one, and then hit Command G, which stands for group. And then they all get joined together in this rack. So now it says Audio Effects Rack. And you have your same order of instruments. Filter, chorus, civil delay, reverb. Now there's no separator between them. They're just running one into the next. And double click this one, close that one, close that one, close that one, close that one. And that's my effects rack. So it's almost like having a pedal board built into one simple control. Now what's interesting about that is that I can actually put this effects rack inside of another effects rack. So you have to be careful when you're looking at these instruments and effects patches in Ableton. You might see instruments nested in effects racks. They're nested in effects racks. So whenever you see this closed bar here, this closed bracket, followed by this closed bracket, it's almost like programming language where you see parentheses inside of parentheses. That's how you know that that instrument is enclosed into one rack. So if I select this rack and I hold Shift and select this instrument, I can hit Command G again. And that's going to group all of those into another rack. So there's an instrument rack now that contains this instance of operator, followed by this audio effects rack. So now if you look closely, you can see how here's the instrument rack, then there's the operator, then here's the instrument effect rack inside of that instrument rack. And this entire output is being, so the MIDI input is coming in on this side, and then the output is being played out here to the master output. And if I want to, I can take this instrument effect rack and I can give it a name by hitting Command R and call it, let's call it Paddy number 2, and then save it into my user library under instrument racks. Enter, and now I have this Paddy number 2 instrument, and I've saved it there on this computer, and it will be there forever and ever for me to use at any point in the future. If I decide I want that particular pad sound, I can just grab Paddy 2 and drag it into a new project. So I don't have to recreate this sound again in the future. I can just pull this instrument right in And this ADG stands for Ableton Device Group, and you can tell that it is going to be a device group because it's got this separated icon. It kind of looks like a couple of devices strung together. Whenever you do that and then save it, it's going to show up with this icon so that you know it's a group of devices and not just a single device. If you see one that is a single device, this is going to look like one big window. So like, for instance, under operator, see how that looks like one big window? That means that it's not a device group. It's just a single device, and that device is not contained in an instrument rack or an audio effects rack. It is just its own device without anything else added onto it. So I will give some more detail on mapping parameters on these effects racks and instrument racks, but for now, that is how you determine the difference between an effects rack and audio effects rack and how to group them together should you choose to do so. All right, we'll see you on the next one.